Welcome to Shorty SuperCoach and welcome to another player profile. As promised, a bit of ruck talk. Now, as you would have seen yesterday, I had a look at Nic Nat, a bit of concern over where his body's at and what he's doing. Will he be fit for round one? Does he warrant selection at 465? It does beg the question, maybe we've got to look outside the Max Gawn Nic Nat combination. So I did promise a bit of a look at a ruckman that I really did like in replacing Nic Nat, and it is this man, Brodie Grundy. Now, I'll focus obviously on Grundy, but a lot of others I've seen probably have Steph Martin, Paddy Ryder's obviously in the mix. Goldstein still is being enjoyed by a few people. Paddy Ryder. I think Grundy would have to be my leading man at this point in time, but I will need to see some very critical information and positioning through the JLT just to reassure me, as the stats will reveal later in the podcast. But look, I really do like Grundy. He's a type of ruckman who can win a lot of his own ball. He doesn't rely purely on having a good day with the hit-outs, and you hope that he has 9 to 10 reasonably effective touches. Sam Jacobs was also another one who's been pretty big. I left him out. But look, a lot of the other rucks, I'm just not as big of a fan. If you look at a few of the guys like that, there's been a lot that are either perhaps sharing the duties, or they've been a little up and down over the course of their career. They've had a few 100-plus averages, but equally a few in the 90s. But look, I'll profile them and the rucks on another day. Let's focus on Grundy here. And I do really like him. I like his consistency. I love the fact that he can get around the ground, win plenty of his ball, get his hands dirty, tackle hard. I do enjoy having a ruckman that isn't dependent on winning the actual ruck battle, because you're not always going to win that ruck battle. Sometimes you'll get monstered by a bigger bloke or a guy who has a great day. So I think it's important that when it's not your day in the ruck, you are capable of getting more than your 8 to 10 touches. You are capable of potentially getting that 20 touches, and that's where I see Grundy. He averaged 18 touches per game, but was more than capable of getting your 35 to 40 hit-outs. So I really enjoyed that. He's been long touted as one of the future gun ruckmen after being taken at pick 18 in 2012, which he was a bit of a faller on that occasion. Averages, 74.8 in 2013, 62.9, and then some real consistency without going huge the last few years. 2015, 90.6, 95.7, and 97.2. And if you've watched this channel for a while, I started Grundy last season, and it didn't really work out how I had thought. I had similar thoughts last year that he would really come on and break the 3-figure bracket. Now, it didn't happen. It just didn't quite work for him. We can really take a look at that. I think it was probably the lack of having a big ceiling. You see a lot of ruckmen, some of our top ruckmen, having those real big games. He just didn't quite find that. And if you want to get real picky, perhaps while he wins a lot of the ball, maybe he isn't the cleanest by foot or the cleanest disposer of the ball. But I do really enjoy that he does find his way to plenty of contests. And I do enjoy his consistency. I just think that ceiling is something he needs to find. Now, if we want to look at that consistency, had a high score of 135, but in 11 of his 20 matches was somewhere in between 80 and 105. Also had hundreds of 114, 116, 113, 120, and 125. In fact, he only went under 70 once, and that was in round 7 against the Blues with a 58. So, of course, we probably need a little bit more. We need less of the 80 to 90 stuff, and we need more of those to be 100 to 110, and that'll really get it. But what I enjoy is not one of these ruckmen where he's on and he's going great, or he's well off. Because often what we can see in developing ruckman is some really good days and some promise, but equally some 40s and 50s. But we haven't seen that from Grundy, so I think we can tick the consistency box, and I think it'll be much easier for him to add a bit more quantity, a bit more frequency on the bigger tons than it is to add consistency to your game. So I do feel it's easier to just add those couple of more touches, a little bit more impact, and all of a sudden you're quite easily breaking the 100 mark. Now, I do want to discuss some of his stats when he was joined by Mason Cox. Now, he is about in the prime for being a ruckman too. He'll turn 24 in the early stage of the season, 82 games. You'd think out of all these notes that I have in front of me on this little page, you'd think I'd have his SuperCoach price. I don't have it. From memory, I'm thinking it's 521, roughly 60k more than Nic Nat from memory. Regardless, that's about what we're looking at. So I feel he's fairly affordable as well. So what do I like? He's consistent, wins his own ball, gets around the ground, has shown a want and an often very regular #1 solo ruckman. What I haven't liked is this lack of ceiling. Perhaps doesn't have enough big weapons as a ruckman yet. Maybe you can clean those up. I have faith that he can. The big talking point, and what many people will be saying, is Shorty, Mason Cox. Buckley has said they want to play both of them in the same team. Surely we have to just put a line through him straight away. Sam Jacobs, probably going to go solo. Cruiser, likewise. Ryder, you'd have to say likewise. Stephen Martin, will Archie Smith come in? I'm not sure, but likely a solo ruck. So why are you telling me to get on board Grundy, who may well share the ruck? You're crazy, mate. Well, I'm not 100% sold that he'll take it solo, but I'm fairly confident while they will be in the same team, Cox will be more of your forward line option. As we know, Darcy Moore heading to the back line, Ben Reid a likely starter in the forward line. I don't see how they can play Mason Cox any more than 25% in the ruck. They need him in the forward line providing an option, because I know modern day forward lines are much smaller, more medium size, and Collingwood have quite a good medium size forwards to play with, but you've got to have someone up there. And the big kicker for me, because I hadn't looked at Grundy, I felt that Cox was going to play a bit more ruck time. That's how what Buckley had said. But once Darcy Moore went to the back line, and Buckley has said that that will be a permanent move for not just this season but a couple. They see him a long-termer in the defence. Now that's interesting. That's a story for another day. But I feel as if Cox just has to play majority forward. And if we see that through the JLT, I'm prepared to take a risk that he will only play your 15 to 20% in the ruck. The rest will be forward. It's the modern way. I think the days of us wanting solo rucks are dwindling just with interchange and the speed of the game. I think you're always going to have to sacrifice a little bit of the game to another ruckman. And the fact that Grundy can win his own ball does mean that I feel that he can find possessions in another manner other than just pure hit-outs. Because generally that's the concern. You're not in the stoppages often. There goes your 4 to 5 points for an effective hit-out, and you don't get an opportunity to win the stoppage. So that's fair enough. I feel like Grundy's got a few more strings to his bow than purely the hit-out. Here's where it gets interesting though. Crunching the numbers from last season, when he was joined by Mason Cox, does make for some interesting reading. I want to put an asterisk on it firstly, that I feel their roles will be slightly different with the Darcy Moore factor this year, but certainly the way they combined last year doesn't bode well for Grundy. 9 games for Mason Cox, rounds 1, 5, 6, 7, 15, 16, 21, 22, 23. In 7 of those, they both played in the same game. Now, I want to take a look at a few numbers. Those games going from round 1 onwards. Brodie Grundy SuperCoach scores: 82, 71, 83, 58, 105, 80, missed round 21 and 22, round 23, scored 93. Hit-outs in those games, again going from rounds 1 to 23, 29, 35, 33, 30, 29, I think I'm reading my writing correctly, 24 and 12. Interestingly enough, those numbers sound bad. With Grundy as a pure ruck on his own without Mason Cox, he's averaging 105.6. When Cox is joining him, 81.7. That makes for some pretty grim reading. But I've sifted through the stats, I've had a look at it, and I know that correlates and it can't be a coincidence, but I don't see where he's actually losing on any sort of stat. His clearances didn't drop off, his possessions didn't drop off unbelievably. He didn't go absolutely south in hit-outs. He certainly didn't go up, but he didn't seem to drop off significantly in tackles. Looking at it, he certainly dropped off, say, 5 to 6 in hitouts. And you've got to add in that Mason Cox didn't take away too many of those hitouts. Grundy was still the dominant man in the stat for hitouts. Cox's two biggest hitout matches were rounds 21 and 22 when Grundy didn't play. He got 25 and 43 hitouts. For the rest, he didn't really get any more than 21 or 22. Most were in the teens, and I think he had 120. So he's not 50-50ing on the hitouts, and he's not a big ball winner. Grundy's still finding 16 to 17 touches. You know, yes, he's probably down 2 to 3 on his average without him. He's probably down 5 or 6 so in the hitouts. So I think that's probably where it is. It's not a glaring deficiency when he gets joined by Cox, but it is just across the board. There's no glaring statistic, but I think he probably just loses 5 to 6 hitouts. Maybe that's 10 or 11 points, depending on the day. 2 to 3 touches, maybe that's 6 or 7 points. Maybe a tackle, another 4 points. So all of a sudden, it doesn't seem like a huge drop-off from one stat, but just a little bit here and there, from 20 to 30 minutes less in the ruck or whatever it works out to be, and all of a sudden he's losing 15 to 20 points on average compared to when he's with or without Mason Cox. Now, as I said off the top, I think Cox will play more forward, more of the key role, a key post, and less time ruck. And I think that'll be the smart thing to do. We're going to have to wait and see what JLT produces and what it shows for us. But it makes for some very interesting reading. It really is interesting when you crunch the numbers and compare when someone is joined, particularly in the ruck, because they clearly affect one another. Gone are the days where you have two rucks on the ground, such as the speed of AFL footy, but it's very interesting when you take a look at that. So, yeah, certainly intrigued by Brodie Grundy. As you can tell, I'm a pretty big fan of him. Started him last year. Was an honest selection without being great. He wasn't what I wanted. I was thinking he'd get to 105. I still feel he can this season, but I will be looking closely at the JLT series just to see more so where Mason Cox lines up, because I have faith that Grundy can do what he does when he gets in there and gets plenty of ruck time. It'll just be Mason Cox and where he lines up. So, very interested to see. As I said in the Nic Nat video, you don't have to go pulling the trigger just yet. Have a few backup plans if X or Y happens, but don't have to pull the trigger yet. Nic Nat is still on my side. I just want to see a bit of JLT action, and that'll be coming up soon. We'll see a bit of AFLX. That'll be interesting. I'll be intrigued to see how that goes. I'll watch it, but I certainly won't be casting too much of a view towards it affecting my SuperCoach side, but it'll be good to see how it all goes. So let me know your thoughts on the ruck situation as a whole. Let me know if you're a fan of Grundy, bit of a potential POD as well. I know a lot of people, if they have lost faith in Nic Nat, have most seemingly gone with Jacobs or Martin, seemingly, and a fair few in the Ryder camp. Not too much love for Cruiser, and fair enough, injury-prone guy who's extremely expensive with a once-off big season, so that's fair enough. But there are a few other options around there. Let me know who you're rolling with. If you think Grundy's a great option, you've had him for a while, let me know. If you're a Collingwood man, let me know. I'd be interested to hear what you say about him. So thanks again for tuning in. I'll be back for some more player profiles very soon. Catch you soon. Cheers.